The Illuminati, as the popular term for them today, is a group which has been around for thousands of years on this planet. They came from off of this planet and interbred with humans. They are reptilian. They have their chosen bloodlines, and they continue to try and keep their genetics pure and interbreed with these chosen bloodlines. These beings are part human and they are part reptilian. And they continue to run the planet. They are our world leaders, and nobody at this current time who is a government leader is there running the countries unless they were put there by them or they are one of them. Bloodline, in my particular case, I was a slave. And to them, most of humanity, or all of humanity, they consider inferior. They consider humanity a resource to be used for their purpose. They are at a time, a very important time right now, when they are working with some new energies on this planet that they don't work well with. So a lot is coming out into the open, and that is higher law, that it must come out into the open. And they are under higher law also. I was chosen for what I did and for my involvement because my family was bloodline. My mother's family, all I knew growing up was that they were Irish for generations, not even any brown-eyed people among them. My mother, her sister, went back to Ireland and researched the bloodline, the family genetics, in the early 70s. And I was told that the original family on the father's side actually came from the south of France. Now, anyone that has done any reading from some well-known authors at this point know that southern France plays a major role in this. That is the source of Merovingian bloodline. On the other side, in her family, it has been told to me that her mother's father was a ritual statistician with the Quaker Coronati Lodge, and he was one of the founding members. That lodge is very involved at a very high level. On my father's side, I have been told that his father, and I have seen the papers, that he's illegitimate. I have also been told by a number of persons approaching me that he is an illegitimate Rothschild. Now, I was always told that that bloodline was impure. The Rothschilds are not looked upon within the Illuminati as a pure, high bloodline. They have a lot of arguments among themselves as to the purity of their bloodlines. And there is a group within, or there are more than one group within the Illuminati that consider themselves the purest of bloodlines, and that they rule by right. They feel that they rule by right and not to be elected by the Pope or okayed by any type of Christianity to rule. So they have many disagreements, discords, and arguments among themselves. And that is a weak point with them, that they cannot agree, and they have big egos. And that is where they will eventually catch themselves up with their ego. I was chosen because of the bloodline, and I was chosen because I have psychic ability. This was tested out and shown when I was a very young child, about age 3. When I was 3 years old, I was causing objects to move without touching them. This is an ability that they look for. It's not important that you can move objects. That's not the important part. That shows that you have the psychic ability, which is what they look for. Because reptilian bloodlines, in a way, they are very psychic. They can read any of you and know what you're going to do before you do it. And they're not to be underestimated that way. But they cannot enter into any dimension higher than a 4th dimension. They do not have the genetics to do it. They were hoping, interbreeding with humans, that they would have the ability. They do not have it. They continue to utilize human beings for many purposes, and the purpose that they utilized me for were my psychic abilities, my ability to enter into higher dimensions, my ability to bring down those that are still in this so-called 4th dimension into this physical realm. Some of the things that I can remember about the psychic ability that I had, my mother was constantly on me about poltergeist activity in the house, which she blamed on me. There were lighted spheres in the house, there were things moving in the house. And she talked about troubled children that have poltergeist activity around them. And I, at the time, in my multiplistic state, because I had multiple personality disorder, and the part of me that was out didn't have a clue. I didn't know why she was telling me this. And she was also very psychic. This is another point that I would like to make, because it came down from her side of the family. She was a very psychic woman. And she was utilized, the way that she was utilized, I do not know, because it was kept away from me. I was very apart, very separated from my mother, and they wanted it that way. I have seen others that were also very psychic, and this is something that they are the ones that are the forefront, the pushing source for a search for psychic people. I can remember telling people things that I knew that there was death around people. I would tell them, I see this, I see that you're going to come close to death, you're going to be in an accident, and this would happen. This happened with an art teacher that I had. I was taking oil painting lessons, and I told her that. I can actually remember I was in nursing school, going in and laying hands on somebody, and they were actually, the next day, left the hospital. They had been very ill. And I always very aware that it wasn't me, myself, doing it. It was a channeled source. I was raised the oldest of 4 girls. I was raised in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church does not believe in any of this, or they are not acknowledging any of this. It reinforced my programming because it is a very ritualistic religion. And it was every time I went there to church and listened to the sermon, any of these thoughts that I was thinking, I pushed to the back of my mind, and I didn't think about them. So it was very reinforcing. When I was 5 years old, I was taken to Russia, and I was involved in a program with other children who had the same abilities. The Russians were much more advanced in this area. They were very interested in the psychic research, paranormal research. And what happened to me there was that I was being involved in developing these abilities. They did an ice water immersion with me more than one time. It was many times. I was being immersed in ice water so that my heart would stop beating. And my essence would leave my body. I was told that when this happened, I was to go to a particular room where there was an officer in a uniform sitting in the room. He was sitting at a table. On the table was a piece of paper and a pencil. All I was to do was to make a mark on the paper. That was what I was to do. And this proved to them that I did this. And it was observed. And it was recorded. I was not able to do this the first few times. It was repeated until I was able to do it. It went on from there. What this program was called was Operation North Star. I did not understand, it took me years to understand, why would it be called that? Naval intelligence here was involved with it. The reason that it is called Operation North Star is because when a psychic leaves their body, they are taught to go out into the other dimensions through the North Star. The trigger for me was that these phone calls continued, and there were things besides phone calls, but as I was trying to go through recovery, the phone calls continued, and some of these phone calls were sonar sounds on a phone that you would hear from a submarine. My association that I was given was of picturing a submarine going into the Arctic Ocean, into ice water. And when that sub was immersed in the water, then I would start to experience this Kundalini energy going all the way up my spine to the chakras. And when it got all the way up to my head, then I would leave my body and traverse dimensions, whatever it was they wanted me to do. And what I know from my work of recovery is that I realized in that state what was going on. And my goal was to try and get away from them before they could latch to me in that state and control me. And that is what I tried to do. For many years, this went on, and I also ended up visiting the parapsychology unit at UCLA. That unit was associated with this. Jolly West was the medical director of that unit, and Thelma Moss was the psychologist or parapsychologist associated with that unit. They were looking for people that had these abilities. All of these intelligence groups there are people in the intelligence groups that are not associated with any of this. However, there are many in the intelligence groups that are associated with this kind of activity. And they are working in conjunction with the Illuminati to achieve goals of total control. Psychics are considered very dangerous to New World Order because psychics need to be controlled. They are harder to control. Psychics employ scalar energy, or scalar wave technology. That is what is the mode of transport of information and knowledge, and it is hard, next to impossible to control. So it is monitored. Soon after I started recovery, I was in a conversation with a woman by the name of Julianne McKinney. And Julianne McKinney, to my understanding, was ex-Army intelligence and CIA. She had a contact in the NSA call her after our conversation to warn me that I was being monitored by the NSA. And I was being psychically monitored. This was the term used. My understanding is that the NSA have computers that do psychic monitoring. And they monitored brain waves, they monitor you psychically, and we've had this technology for a while. I was told, don't have memories, don't write anything down on paper, wait about a month before you do any of that. Try to think of other things because you are being monitored. That was very difficult for me to do because I was in recovery. When I was a child, in order to make me into an obedient slave, I had to be trained. And the training actually starts when you're a baby. Well, they're still testing you. They're testing you in utero. They're testing you when you're a baby. They're testing your response to noxious stimuli. So they will hurt the mother to hurt the baby. They also, they utilize astrology. And there is just no other way to say it. They utilize astrology in order to ensure that they bring about somebody who has the particular characteristics that they are looking for. It doesn't mean that you will do this or that at a certain age. It means that you are more likely to be steered in this direction or that, and this is more likely to be your reaction. My birth was engineered to happen so that I was born, whether you want to call it Aquarius or Pisces. It was engineered to happen in February and it was right on the cusp. It was February 23rd. Numerology plays an important role to them also, because the numerics that you're given at birth, that is your name, are influencing factors on you for the rest of your life, even if you change your name. I did change my name legally, but I didn't do it to get away. I did it to add power. I do not reject my other name, but I add to it, and I balance it out. This is really, in the end, all about balancing energies and forces. This is what all of this is about. With the Illuminati, with humanity, it isn't about humans versus reptilians. It isn't even about that. It is about the misuse of power. It is about the misuse of energy. It's about the misuse of feminine energy and the misuse of male energy. And it needs to be corrected. This solar system is out of balance. This galaxy is out of balance. We are out of balance. They are imposing a false matrix upon this dimension. And this needs to be corrected. People need to be aware of it. This is how they will bring down the lower fourth into this dimension, which is their objective. What people need to understand is that the Illuminati strings are pulled also. They are not, in the end, in control here. They are also subject to string pulling, and they are also subject to being lied to by their puppet masters who are on other dimension. They're another dimensional level. They lie to them too. So I am not in judgment. My message is things need to change. Whether they want to change them is another matter, but we need to do something. When I was a child, the basic training that goes on with children is to remove a sense of safety and security. So children go through things like having a close family member, such as a father and or mother and or brothers or sisters, older ones, cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends, molest them, perpetrate upon them in the most horrendous ways. There is nothing more awful that you can do to a little child than to sexually molest and perpetrate on their person. Because here is an adult that is supposed to love you, take care of you. And what are they doing to you? Sticking a penis in your mouth or in other orifices, telling you not to tell, pinching you, biting you, hurting you, doing things that don't leave marks on you. This is an adult that's supposed to love you. So the little child thinks, this must be love. But it hurts. I don't understand. It's like having an explosion go off in your mind. So you never know. You never know when you're little who is going to hurt you, because you know it hurts. And you grow up really being programmed into thinking this is how it is. You don't know anything else. And the abuse is so terrible, just at that level, in your everyday life, that you've got to dissociate it, push it away, forget. The ones that can't do that, those children are the ones that, if they make it to adulthood, they end up being diagnosed schizophrenic, psychotic. They end up in jail, committing crimes. I guarantee you that every sexual molester in jail has been molested horrifically. That does not excuse their behavior, because we all make a choice. But this is how it goes on. It goes on from generation to generation, and it has increased greatly. A child's basic need, besides safety, is shelter, food, water, clothing, elimination. Little children who are told, no, you can't have any water, left in a room, no, you better not pee, because if you do, you're going to drink it. And then guess what? It happens. If you have a bowel movement, you're going to eat it. And that is what happens. This is basic training. Left in a room and ignored, you're understimulated, you're sensory deprived, left in a room with blankets tied around you so you can't move. You don't know what time of day it is because maybe you're blindfolded. You're left that way. And then you're overstimulated. And everyone acts like nothing is happening. This isn't even happening because the adults around you don't talk about it. They never say a word. Life goes on around you, and it's ignored, and you're ignored. You feel crazy. You feel like this cannot be happening. It must not be real. I'm not real versus none of this is real. Maybe both. This is crazy making, and this causes a child who has the ability to go inside themselves, to dissociate and start creating their own little world. The seed is planted because they need you to have an inside world, because you're going to spend a lot of time in the inside world, that they're going to take that seed and they're going to create all of these inside scenarios. This is how you create multiple personalities. This is a very early training. This sets the scene. This lets you know that anything can happen anytime. About the age of 5, they start training you for what they want you to be doing. They have realized your tendencies, they've studied your reactions, and they will start training you for what role it is you're going to have. About that time, there's a little marriage ceremony for a child. The child is married into the particular group, organized perpetrator group, you can call it that, you can call it cult. The child is married into it. And they are given a ring. Today, on my little finger, on this hand, I have that little ring. It is a child's ring. I don't know anyone else that has saved it. There are others that have run across it. When they were older, it was passed to them again to remind them, and they have thrown it out. I chose to save it because I want to talk about it. And I want people to know these things are real. This ring has blood stains on it. It has a bar sinister on a crest on the side. And that is indicative of bloodline. There are others that have this ring out there. They start involving you in rituals. They start watching you. They watch your reaction. They push you to be as involved as they can get you to be in the ritual. They will hold your hand on a knife when they do sacrifice. This is so horrific for a child that they really have a hard time remembering. This is some deeper layer that goes inside of a child. I was involved in all of these things. I am not the only one. There are others. All children are brought up like this. It makes you part of the group. And they tell you, you're one of us. You're just like us. Everything that's done at a ritual, child is involved in. It is very hard to be at a ritual and see other people being hurt. It's hard enough when you are, but you can zero in on yourself and go away. But when you are helpless, watching others be tortured and seeing what they do there, it's very painful. And it is, I don't even, at this point, I still could not fully describe to you how it feels. It's horrific. In these rituals, the number of participants is very important. Whether they are using male or female energy is important. There are some groups that only employ male energy. There are others that only employ female energy. And there are others that do both, and maybe one or the other for a specific occasion. There are children who are bred and born only to be sacrificed at some point in their lives. That is their purpose. There are so many children whose births are not recorded. I worked with a nurse midwife, and we did home births. She wasn't part of any of this, but if she was upset with somebody, she didn't record the birth. And the parents had problems by the time that child had to go to school. It was a practically impossible situation. All of these loosely knit cults, which are really, down at the bottom under the Illuminati, have homes where these children stay and are schooled in a private system. These children are used in snuff films, porn films, ritual sacrifice, they are white slaves, and they disappear. Some of them go underground. I mean, literally, to underground cities, never to come back up. Some are food. They're a food source. They're an energy source. That's all they are. I went through all of this training when I was, till I was about 12 years old. And I started being groomed again to be a mother goddess. There are only 3 alive on the planet at a time. A mother goddess is someone who is maiden, mother, and crone. The maiden embodies purity. The mother embodies the strength, and the crone embodies the wisdom and the knowledge. There are others that have other roles to play, but this specifically was my role. My role at a ritual was to bring down what they call the ancient ones, the old ones from the 4th dimension, to be a literal channel through which this being, discarnate entity, would come. And they would beg to stay here. They did not like where they were. They wanted to be in this physical realm. Some of them were brought down, or I should say many were brought down and anchored here. And they have to be anchored here with blood sacrifice. So at these rituals, there were, of course, sacrifice in which someone was killed or persons were killed. They have to be, so I've read from those that have an argument with what I say, that any blood sacrifice is a willing participant. Well, yes, that's true. Those that are willing don't know they're going to be sacrificed. They are raised and told what they're doing is an honor. They are being honored. In order to have the adrenochrome come out in the blood, which is what the reptilians need, those that take human form, and they need the adrenochrome to keep it, to extend their abilities, to for a little while have some more psychic ability. They need the adrenochrome. The only way that the adrenochrome can come into the blood, the way that they need it, is for someone to be tortured and traumatized in a long, drawn-out way. And that is what they need. When that happens, there's approximately 10 cc's of adrenochrome that will be coming out into the bloodstream. And that is what the person that this happens to, they're not told beforehand that they are going to die. This is why they're willing. They also utilize menstrual blood. My name within this system, one of my names was Starfire, which is pure female essence. I'm not the only one they utilize it from, but that just happens to have been my name because of my role. The menstrual blood that they utilize is they drink it a lot. It helps them retain some youth because the human genetics age faster than the reptilian genetics. And they're trying to balance it out. I believe also that they are trying to balance their own minds out. When I brought down the old ones, they were put in a little circle. That's where I directed them. And this circle was marked off with the points of north, south, east, and west. If you were going to do something like this, you would be bringing them down from a certain area. It might be from the north. That's going to bring down a certain type of energy, or the west, or the south. These are the cardinal points. These are what you bring down. There are specific tones that create vibrations that these entities respond to. And there are certain words that have to be said. And this is what they respond to, and they are so ferocious. Their presence is overwhelming, and they would love nothing more than to get loose here, and that was my role, to keep that from happening, that these energies would be loosed upon the group that was there. They were afraid of them, and these things had to be controlled, and that is what I did. That was my role. And I sent them back again. Sometimes an entity would be brought down to go into someone's body, because there really is a possession going on. And you can call it possession of a demon, you can call it possession of a discarnate entity. Possession by a reptilian. That does happen. And the person that hosts it will cease to exist. That essence will be dissolved at some point. My role as a Mother Goddess was to be present at certain births. At a birth, it was either a sacrifice or it was a blessing. A Mother Goddess, her lifeline, or the number of years that she is supposed to exist in service of the Illuminati, is 52 years of age. They have a short lifespan. When they are 39 years old, they are supposed to be impregnated, specifically with a female. When that female is 13 and the mother is 52, and she has been training that child will sacrifice the mother in a ritual and take over her role. So, let's see, I'm 48, but I don't have a child to take over, because they did do that to me when I was 39. but I did the unthinkable. I was warned by someone that this was going to happen to me. And I said, you know what? It's not going to happen. I'm not playing with their plan. I'm not going along with it. I'm not doing this. And I'm still standing here today on the other side of that line, and I am talking about it. I think that people need to understand how hard it is for someone who is trying to get out of this. And so I would like to talk about that, because I had a hard time getting out of this. I was married. My marriage was set up. I had 2 children. That was set up. They wanted me to have another. I foiled that. I've basically been a problem. But that's my purpose. I started having some severe flashbacks when I was about 31, 32, after the birth of my daughter. And I always knew that something was wrong in my life. When you are dissociative, your world is very narrowed down. It's like having many boxes inside of your head. And you're only in one box at a time. And when you're in that box, you only know about that box. And then you're in another box, and it's like nothing else exists. You have different sets of clothing. You have different tastes. You like different people, and some people you hate that the other part didn't hate. You have different experiences that you can't remember. Or it seems like a dream, because there is some leakage of one dissociated state to another at times. So my world was very narrowed down. But I always knew something was wrong. I was very depressed at times. I was moody. I did things I didn't know why I was doing them. There were big gaps in my memory, but I took it for granted. I thought everyone was like that. I thought everyone had nightmares. I thought everyone had just severe depressions where they wanted to die. I thought everybody did little things to hurt themselves when they didn't feel good and to make it all go away. I thought everybody never cried. In 1988, I started questioning some things that were said to me. My parents are very, very programmed, and they really were watching me, and they don't know, they still don't know. It took me a long time to realize that they weren't evil, bad people. They're programmed. It took me a long time to realize that about my sisters, who still don't have a clue, and they're not happy people.